Jenni, you're hypermobile.
Yep.
So that means you're super flexible, but super wobbly.
Yep.
So instead of just stretching, let's get strong.
Yay!
Let's look at the hips. Ideally, we want to use weights to train the lower body. But too much too soon, and you could hurt yourself. The tricky thing is, when you have a quick Google, it just says things like, do resistance training, use modifications, prioritize stability. But that's not helpful. We need something more specific and more visual. And that's what this video is for. We're going to go through what's a healthy hip range of motion and how to use it properly. How making exercises easier will lead to more progress. How to feel muscles properly when you're doing exercises and not just put pressure on your joints. And how to start learning how to wobble safely so that your body can build more stability without being soul destroying because it's too hard. Then at the end, we'll put it all into one easy session that you can do. We start by moving your hip like a hip. You have a large passive range of motion, meaning you can easily push and pull yourself into positions, but we want to build active range of motion where we use our muscles to control the movements. Active control is something that many with hypermobility struggle with, so we use hip-controlled articulated rotations to build up range of motion with strength. With the hip cars, you want to move as high as you can control. You also want to move really slowly. And think about the muscles that you want to feel. You're not just throwing your leg around aimlessly, you're looking to feel your glutes working as you send the leg out, and you're really looking to feel those muscles of the hip working hard to rotate the leg. Watch out for any compensations. So if your torso starts to bend whenever you're trying to lift the leg up, you want to try and anchor yourself so that you're making sure that you're not doing that, so you're all working at the hip. You're aiming to get this smooth control with as much range of motion as possible. That was principle number 1, active range of motion. Whenever you understand all 4 principles, you're going to be able to apply them to any movement that you do to make them even more beneficial. Next, we want to add load to the range of motion. But we're going to deliberately get you to hold yourself back. It's very common to see people with hypermobility accidentally rush through movements because they can easily get to the end position, but without loading the muscles in the right way, they're putting too much stress on the joints, which can cause a lot of pain. We want to learn how to move slowly and with control so the muscles are being loaded properly and the joints are getting the support they need so that you're not compensating or wibbly wobbling around everywhere during the reps. If we take a large range of motion movement like the deep split squat, we can elevate the front foot to make it easier, and that way we can focus on loading the muscles correctly and get the most benefits of the movement. By elevating the front foot, you reduce how much body weight goes through the leg overall, which means you can focus on loading the hips properly and not pressing through the knee. Make sure to bring attention to your front foot as if it was a suction cup that was stuck down so your foot feels strong. You want to have 3 seconds to pull yourself down to the bottom position, then a 3-second active pause so you're not resting in the bottom position, and then 3 seconds with a controlled press up. You're actively using the muscles the whole time. Over time, as your confidence starts to build and you're able to do the reps with ease, you can start to decrease the height of whatever you're using until you're eventually working your way down to the floor. There's no rush to get to the floor. Principle 2 is all about making it easier. The slower, the better. We're aiming for quality reps. When you're constantly dealing with lax joints, it can be really hard to activate the right muscles. It's really common to have a lazy bum. But once we get your glutes working better, it makes all leg movements better. We do this by using the glute bridge. The key thing is that you use your glutes to extend your hips. You don't just lift your hips up and squeeze your bum at the top. So you're trying to keep a contraction the entire time, even as you're lowering the hips down. You might feel like your quads or your hamstrings are trying to overpower this, so give these wiggles a go. You can work on isometric holds, just holding the top position and contracting as hard as you can. You can also poke the glutes. Closing your eyes really helps here as well. You can try different foot positionings, like taking the feet out wider or pointing the toes outwards. You can elevate the shoulders on a box or a sofa or your bed. You can also do kneeling glute squeezes, trying to get used to contracting and using those glutes to extend the hips. Trying to get a better connection with your glutes can take quite a while, so use all the different variations and really try and increase that connection that you have. Once you have that, then you want to see, can you get that connection into all the other leg exercises that you're doing. Finally, we'll take a look at your stability and all those little muscles and little micro reactions that need to take place to keep your joints feeling safe. This is probably your biggest challenge yet, the single leg deadlift. Stability and muscle activation? A hypermobility nightmare! Let's apply the first 3 principles to this exercise. We want an active range of motion that we can control. And we want to make sure that we're not flopping up and down, touching our toes. The goal is to load the hips, not to touch the ground. Next, we can make it easier to make progress. You can use the kickstand variation, where you take the floating leg away and use it to help you keep balance. We can also use a hand assistance with a wall, chair, or table, and this makes the movement easier so we can really focus on getting it right. Point number 3, we want to make sure we're finding and using the right muscles. So whenever Jenni pushes her hips back, she should feel her hamstrings like a tight rubber band being pulled with even more tension. Then she pauses at the bottom and then uses her glute to extend the hips. This can be really tricky to get the hang of, so make sure you spend loads of time and wiggle around to try and get that right sensation. Once you can feel your hamstrings and glutes working using assistance, you want to add the stability element using balance. You can start off unassisted and go into the rep, and then use assistance to come back up. And then when you've got the hang of that, you can remove the assistance altogether. The main thing is that you feel the muscles working in the same way when you're going unassisted as they did when you were assisted. You want to make sure that you're working one side at a time to check for any differences side to side. If you notice one side is more challenging than the other, just spend a little longer practicing that side. You can split the exercises up throughout the day or reduce the reps to make it even more achievable. Doing them more frequently and consistently is what brings progress. Remember that you want to reduce the difficulty of the exercises so that you can do them more frequently without aggravating anything. Because you're able to easily get into positions, we're building the strength there, and gradually over time you're going to have strength in those end ranges as well, and that's what we want so you can keep making long-term progress.